What is going on right now?
It's not great. I'll say that. I think for the first time since Daniel Jones was drafted, the entire fan base has come together, regardless of where they were at 6 years ago and where they were even feeling 2 weeks ago when,
Mhm.
he had a great game against Seattle. I think the consensus is we've seen enough from him and we're ready to move on at quarterback. Unfortunately, the other quarterbacks that are on the roster are not necessarily better than Jones, but
Right.
I think the feeling is that, we lost our star left tackle. The only other left tackle that we have in right there is god awful. And, Jones was mediocre with a good left tackle, and now with a bad left tackle, he's awful. So I think we kind of just all agree, the defense is for the most part doing the best that they can. This offense is horrible. Maybe Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito would be better at this point instead of Jones.
When you look at Hard Knocks and you saw them, kind of the fanfare of Drew Lock. Look, I get that Daniel Jones was coming off of an ACL injury, but I didn't really think. I mean, the Giants. It kind of got played up. Now, some of that's for TV, but it kind of
Mhm.
got played up like Drew Lock had an opportunity to win the job. I don't know that that was ever the case at all.
Yeah.
But as you said, now it's like, look, we are where we are. Maybe you give Drew Lock an opportunity.
Mhm. I think that's what it comes down to is that, we cannot this offense cannot score a touchdown at home. It's
Right.
been 4 home games this year, they have 1 touchdown, like, it's pathetic, and in my opinion, I do think a lot of that is Jones is just very much in his head. He knows that for 6 years, a large portion of the fan base hates him, he knows what people say about him in the
Mhm.
press, and I honestly just think that he can't get it out of his head when he's at home, and that's why he plays so much better on the road. So I don't know what we're going to see out of him Monday night. Maybe it's going to be better than what we've seen at home, but I have been a Jones supporter because he's the Giants quarterback.
Right.
That's who he decided is the man for the job. I, will support him, but I also feel like, at this point, with the way that the offensive line is and knowing that the left tackle is out, I just don't really think he's going to get any better. So I feel like, what's the harm in putting in Drew Lock? At this point, you paid the guy $5 million. He's going to be the backup guy. Jones is not going to be here for the future. And
Right.
I'm also like, if he didn't have the injury guarantee, fine. Play Jones the rest of the year. I don't care. The season's over for the most part, as far as I'm concerned. But because of that injury guarantee, I'm like, please get him out of there also, because I don't want to be on the hook for him next year when we're
Correct.
finally going to have an out and an opportunity to move on at quarterback.
You mentioned the offensive line. It doesn't seem like the Giants. Look, trust me, the Steelers have had our offensive line issues. We're still going through offensive line issues. Um, why has it been so difficult to be able to put one together? Because it seems like this problem. And again, I'm not trying to just bandwagon jump all over the Giants or anything, but just looking at it, just seems like it's been a problem for a long
Yes.
time.
It has. It's been about a decade, if not longer. I think part of it is we've had 3 different GMs that have all dealt with the same problem. And I think, unfortunately, they've had bad drafts. So, they've drafted offensive linemen in the first round or the second round. Evan Neal is a perfect example of this. I think Joe Shane is overall a good GM, but our 7th overall pick is not playing. And he was supposed to be the right tackle for 10 years. Like, he was
Mhm.
supposed to be the guy opposite Andrew Thomas that settles into this line. So I think that's part of it. It's been bad drafting. It's been a lot of injuries. I think that's also been a huge issue. And I know it's the NFL and everyone deals with injuries, but for the last decade, the Giants have been one of the most injured teams in the league. So
Right.
that they are worse than other teams. And then also some bad free agency moves, like Dave Gettleman signing Nate Solder to a ridiculously expensive
Yeah.
deal when he was a horrible offensive lineman. So, it's kind of just been a combination of all of those different things. It's been also bad offensive line coaches, bad head coaches. It's just been all of it. And, this year is the first year that we've had a suitable offensive line until Andrew Thomas goes down.
Right.
I personally don't think the line is going to be awful for the rest of the year. I think the rest of the line had a bad day and they have to figure out how they're going to play well with Andrew Thomas gone. Now, I
Yeah.
put part of that on the coaching because it's their fault for trotting out Joshua Zudu as a left tackle who is not a left tackle. So you're not helping the 4 other guys there.
Sure. The Giants defense has been okay. I mean, if there's a bright spot, which there is a bright spot, the Giants defense has been all right. I mean, Dexter Lawrence
Oh,
is at this point, you could say he's the defensive player of the year. I mean, the
mhm,
guy is incredible. You literally can't move him, you can't block him. But
mhm.
some of the stats, if you just kind of go look at some of the stats, maybe they don't look great, but I think that's because they're on the field an awful lot and they're put in bad situations. But Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, I think that the Giants defense, who are some of the guys besides those two that have been playing well for this defense this year?
It's a shame because Kayvon was having a good season before he
Yeah,
got injured. So, Aziz has done a really nice job as a pass rusher, but he's not a great run defender, which is what Kayvon was. And sometimes that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. And I know, there are some Giants fans who say, we don't miss Kayvon. Aziz has done a good job, but he's missed out there. I mean, if
right.
you watch the Giants versus Eagles game and you see the way that, Saquon was able to run all over them, they hadn't given up that much run yardage when Kayvon was on the field. So that was tough
Sure.
without Kayvon. But I think Aziz has done a nice job against the edge. Even Drew Phillips has been incredible as a rookie. He's been a guy that, there are not many bright spots, but he's a guy that a lot of us are very excited about. And he's someone who's made a difference when it comes to tackling. We've definitely had issues on this team where the tackling has been atrocious, and he's done a really excellent job there. And, even Cordell Flott, who had a tough start to the season, was playing really well before he just got injured last week. So there definitely have been some guys, and I think as a whole, they're playing well. They just, on Sunday, they were on the field most of the time.
Yeah.
And every time the offense went out there, it was essentially three and out. So, they're bound to get tired and to make mistakes that, up until that point, they were holding defenses to 21 points, which is pretty good. So,
Sure.
if the offense could have scored a couple touchdowns, they would have won more games. So
Right. Brian Dable, I mean, quote unquote, I guess he's a quarterback guy. Technically fixed Josh Allen, hadn't been able to do that. What's kind of his future there? I feel like this season for the Giants, I don't know if it was a make or break season. Clearly, you have way more of the pulse of what's going on with the Giants than I ever will. Um, Having said all of that, just from the outside looking in, it kind of looks like, look, this thing isn't getting better. But I do know this as a person that follows the Steelers, sometimes being patient can work out to your benefit. I understand it may not be going the way that you want it to go, but if you just keep having turnover and turnover and turnover and firing coaches and GMs, you don't always just fix the problem like that. Sometimes you just got to ride out some of the bad stuff. But if the guy is actually a good coach, is that kind of the feeling that, hey, you know what? He's a good coach, just doesn't have all the pieces, had some bad luck with injuries. We need to stick around with this guy for a little while longer to see if he can make this thing work when we get other good players and the situation starts to change.
It depends who you ask because
Okay.
John Mara came out last night and said, as of right now, I don't plan on making any changes at head coach or GM. He said, I'm
Mhm.
planning to stick with these guys through the season and through another year, which I actually think was the right decision. I think that both of them deserve at least another year. I want to see Brian Dable get his own quarterback. Like you said, and like we know, he's done a great job with Josh Allen. And with Daniel Jones, I think there was only a certain amount of good play that he could get out of him. He doesn't have the raw talent that someone like Josh Allen has. So I want to see him draft a quarterback, mold him into what he can be. And when you talk about, the way that coaching or even just a quarterback can change things, like this team needs some help. There's no doubt about that. But when you look at a team like Washington,
Mhm.
who had a lot of turnover this year, look what Jaden Daniels is doing for
Yeah.
them. It's incredible. And even when he comes out of the game with a rib injury, Marcus Mariota comes in and can still move the ball. So I really believe that Dable getting his own quarterback is going to be a good thing. And I think keeping Shane is a good thing too. Now, I know there are a good portion of the fan base too. They're loud, but I don't think there's as many of them who are saying, they want them both gone. And I think like I feel like you do. Like you don't fix a team overnight. It's easy to look at the Texans last year and say, look what CJ Stroud did for them. Well, they're struggling this year. It's easy to say the Commanders are doing great because they got a quarterback. They also, from the top all the way down, they have an entirely new coaching staff, GM, everything is different.
Owners.
Owner, right. So, it's working now, but we're going to see how long that's really going to last for. But I really just think you don't change things overnight. I think we have to be patient. And this is what John Mara said. He said, I have let my emotions get the best of me. And I don't think that that's the right move going forward, that I have to be patient. So I say the same thing to fans who walk out of a game and say, everyone needs to be fired. We have to start over. I'm a fan. I get the emotional part of it. I'm at these games. I'm embarrassed to wear my Giants gear because they look so bad. Like, I'm right there with everyone. I feel the same way, but I don't think it's as simple as firing everyone. I don't think that's the solution. And I think the biggest reason why the people who feel that way is because Bill Belichick is out there, because that's what I hear. Bill Belichick is going to come in here and save this team. He's going to be the GM, he's going to be the head coach, and everything's going to be fine. He's going to get a quarterback. I think if he wasn't out there, there would be less of that, because my argument is the grass isn't always greener. This is our third head coach in 7, 8 years. And look what's happened, it doesn't get fixed overnight.
No, it doesn't. The Steelers made a quarterback change. Things worked. I'm not suggesting that the Giants do that. Had a ton of podcasts this week saying, look, this was a big risk for Mike Tomlin,
Mhm.
changing all of this stuff, because the Steelers were 4-2. I'm not saying Justin Fields played great, but he was still 4-2.
Right.
Any chance that they do make a change? I know we kind of touched on that earlier, but where they sit, is there any chance that they make a change and maybe we just don't know about it right now?
So Dable said on Monday that they're rolling with Jones on Monday night, and I think that's going to be the plan. I think if by halftime the defense has kept us in the game and it's a close game, but the offense has 0 points on the board or maybe a field goal if they're lucky,
Okay.
I think we're going to see a change at halftime. I expected it last game versus the Eagles when it was getting bad. I thought at halftime for sure we're going to see Drew Lock. But I think that at this point, Jones has a short leash. And,
Gotcha.
if he's the problem on Monday by halftime, I think we're going to see Drew Lock in there.
The Steelers have a propensity of, because if you just look at this game, the Steelers are better than the Giants. But the
Yes.
Steelers have a propensity of playing down to their competition and losing those football games. So, what are some of the things that the Giants are going to have to do to be able to beat Pittsburgh on Monday night?
I think the biggest thing is going to be that the offensive line has to play well, because the Eagles defense going into Sunday had 11 sacks in
Right.
6 games. They walked out of MetLife Stadium with 19 sacks.
Right.
So I'm really worried about that. Dexter Lawrence right now has more sacks than TJ Watt, but I'm afraid to say things like that out loud because TJ Watt could have a showing out party on Monday night on national television. The Giants are historically horrible in prime time, especially with Daniel Jones. He's 1-14. And so that's my biggest thing, is that if the offensive line can block and hold TJ Watt and limit him, we should be able to have some success, whether it's Daniel Jones back there or Drew Lock. I expect them to feed Malik Neighbors the ball. They have to establish the run game, which I think against Pittsburgh is going to be hard. But one of my problems with Dable is that the teams that we've played that have a bad run defense, he goes out there winging the ball. And,
Like
and
last
like
week.
Jones, I'm like, what are you doing? Jones can't even throw a 10-yard pass. Why aren't you trying to run the ball? Now, the Steelers have a much better run defense, but I still think that he's got to start running the ball. And if the Steelers repeatedly shut him down, then you say, okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit.
Right.
So I'd like to see a more balanced approach on offense. For defense, Russ had a good game last week. I think he's feeling confident again. I think, they're really going to have to watch George Pickens, and I'm worried about him specifically because he's been really good against contested catches. And, we're going to be missing, I think, Cordell Flott and potentially Adoree Jackson again. And
Mm.
with the way Tay Banks has played this year, I don't trust him against Pickens. I think Pickens could absolutely destroy him. So I think if he can limit him one on one and make some plays, the Giants could be in good shape, but I don't have enough confidence in them to win this game.
You're right. The run defense has been really good this year. The pass defense, it's been okay. It's been good at times, but while they're really good against the run, they have a really good pass rush. And that's where the difference comes in. You know, TJ Watt doesn't have a ton of sacks, but like last game against the Jets, I mean, they literally were triple teaming him. But then Alex Highsmith caused all kinds of problems. He just came back from an injury. That's kind of where the Steelers can get by with, yes, you can triple TJ Watt if you want, but we got other guys that can cause
Mhm.
problems for you. But that's the thing that worries me on the flip side is, you know, Brian Banks is really good, but Dexter Lawrence, you just can't block that guy. I'm
Right.
concerned about the Steelers interior because number one, they're starting two rookie or a guy that's a backup and a rookie, you know, inside, and then Isaac Siamala on the other side. But they haven't played great. They didn't play great last game. They played okay, but not great. Well, Dexter Lawrence is great. He commands at minimum a double team.
Yeah.
And even that's not enough. So I think that's where the cat and mouse game is going to come in. Can the Steelers pass protect against what I think is a pretty good pass rush from the Giants? So